In 1925, after graduating from the University of Vermont with a degree in philosophy, he was unsure as to what he wanted to do professionally with his life. His sister, Carmencita, who was living in Chicago working as a teacher at an elementary school, married a wealthy boy she had met in Boston. Fortunately for Emerico, she offered him a place to stay while he spent some time organizing his thoughts. To earn some money, he gave private guitar lessons to children who could not afford to pay a much larger fee or study at a conservatory. Having played both classical compositions and jazz music, he was talented.
While in Chicago, Emerico became an avid reader of an anarchist newspaper, Freedom Press, which was written right there in the city. After reading the paper for about a year, in 1927, he finally summoned up the courage to write his own article. He titled it Immorality in an Economically Prosperous Era.
The article was ultimately rejected. Although the title of the article hinted at the discussion of immorality in the 1920s, apart from 2 paragraphs, did not reference any current events. He was, however, praised for his immense knowledge and understanding of anarchist theory. William Tucker, the editor, wrote Emerico a letter asking him to give it another shot. Unfortunately, while crossing the street, he was struck by a car.
It's an incredibly ironic situation. Here's an anarchist who just wrote an article about the immorality of consumerism being hit by a custom-painted, bright blue Bugatti Type 38 touring car. This premium top-of-the-line automobile was just released by Bugatti that year. In today's standards, it would have cost well over $220,000.
Emerico was knocked unconscious by the blow and laid in the street. A police officer, a block up the road, saw the entire thing and hurried to the accident.
Unfortunately for Emerico, he had no way of hiding the letter from William Tucker. The police officer accidentally discovered it when looking for his identification. He was arrested and charged with being an anarchist conspirator. To make matters worse, on the letter was the location and time of the group's next meeting. The police showed up and arrested the whole group.
He never wrote any letters while in prison, and upon his release in 1928, he did not talk about those 8 months, not even with his sister, whom he trusted more than anyone.
Emerico was sentenced to 8 months in an Illinois state penitentiary, a period that would change his life forever.
Ernesto responded that Emerico should take a trip to live with him indefinitely in Barcelona. It took some convincing, but finally in 1928, Emerico moved back to Spain. He would end up living there the rest of his life.
He spent the next 2 months living with his sister in Chicago. Only this time, his passion for anarchism, radicalism, and just about everything vanished. In its place, a deep state of depression set in. His sister became worried and wrote to Ernesto in Spain asking him for advice. Upon his return to Spain, Emerico also reconnected with his parents, who had moved back to Madrid following his enrollment in college. He had fallen out of touch with them after their departure. Emerico fell in love with Spain. He had never traveled to Barcelona, and most of his memories of Madrid had completely faded. After about 1 month in Barcelona, he decided he wanted to reside permanently in Spain.
With the help of his parents' money, Emerico was able to start his own guitar shop in Barcelona. With leftover money, he bought the apartment above it. This way, he no longer had to live with Ernesto, who wanted his girlfriend to move in with him. The guitar shop may not have been making him a fortune, but he was able to pay his necessary bills and keep food on the table.
It was a stormy evening. Emerico had kept his shop open past the usual closing time in order to fix a customer's guitar. A young Belgian girl who had just moved to the country was seeking shelter from the rain. Emerico's store was the only one open on the block.
Emerico was familiar with Barcelona, having lived there for a little over a year, but was still having some trouble socializing. Lies had just moved to the city about a month ago and knew very few people. Emerico offered to show her around and introduce her to some of his friends. The two hit it off, and their friendship quickly turned into a much deeper romantic connection.
It was his newfound love with Lise who first shared with him a record by the composer Igor Stravinsky. It was the Russian composer's third ballet, performed by the Ballet Russe, a Russian ballet company that performed at the Palais Garnier in Paris, France. The piece was known in French as Sacre du Printemps, or the Rite of Spring. and it had been an extremely controversial piece when it first premiered May 29th of 1913. Following the performance, the audience actually began to riot. The piece was a revolutionary composition. One section that Stravinsky had written in his head, he had absolutely no idea how to notate it on paper. He was forced to create a new method of notating compositions.
Emerico had listened to a lot of popular music from the United States, but he had never heard anything like this piece of music before, and before its first performance, neither had anyone else. Emerico described the sound as the most pleasant sound he had ever heard.